Based on the last 75 years of history, it's hard to believe that Russia was once an ally of the United States, but that was the case during World War II. Germany was a foe of both during World War II, which united the two world powers in a common goal, the defeat of Nazi Germany. At the conclusion of World War II, the Soviet Union engineered the installation of communist governments in countries that it occupied at the end of the war, to include Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Romania, and Albania, as well as the part of Germany they occupied. The Western European countries were allowed to continue to self-govern without interference from the United States. Thus began the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. One of the first instances of contention at the start of the Cold War was the Berlin blockade. The Soviet Union blocked the Western Allies' access to the sectors of Berlin under Western control. As a countermeasure to the Berlin blockade, the Western Allies began the Berlin Airlift, in which supplies were airlifted to the occupants of West Berlin. The airlift took place from June 1948 to September 1949, and the countries participating in the airlift were the United States, Britain, France, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. Air crews from these countries flew over 200,000 sorties in 1 year, supplying West Berliners with necessities such as fuel and food. The original plan was to drop 3,400 tons of supplies daily, but by the end of the airlift, that total was being far exceeded. At the height of the airlift, one plane reached West Berlin every 30 seconds. On May 12, 1949, the Soviets lifted the blockade, but the airlifts continued on until September 1949. From the end of the blockade until the Berlin Wall was built in 1962, 3.5 million East Germans, about 20% of the population, circumvented Eastern Bloc immigration restrictions and defected from East Berlin to West Berlin. The sheer number of immigrants leaving East Berlin to the west further exasperated East German authorities due to the fact that a great number of immigrants were young and well educated. The loss of this desirable demographic became known as the brain drain. The citizens left in East Germany were becoming older and less educated, a dilemma that was becoming increasingly troublesome for the Soviets and East Germans. The situation became so untenable for the German and Soviet communists that a secret agreement between East German leader Walter Ulbricht and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev put into motion the framework for the construction of the Berlin Wall. On August 12, 1961, Ulbricht signed an order completely closing borders between East and West Germany and authorizing the construction of a border wall completely isolating West from East. The construction of the Berlin Wall was successful in almost completely stopping immigration between East and West Germany and East and West Berlin. In essence, the wall did its intended job. The Cold War continued unabated for many years, with the specter of mutually assured destruction deterring both the U.S. and the Soviets from escalating from Cold War to all-out nuclear war. Probably the closest that the two superpowers came to actual war was during the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962, but that's a story for another time. Suffice it to say that the tensions between the U.S. and Soviet Union continued consistently onward until a Hollywood actor turned President of the United States, injected his powerful influence into the fray. President Ronald Reagan visited Germany in June of 1987 and made a now famous speech at the Brandenburg Gate of the Berlin Wall. The visit was to commemorate the 750th anniversary of the city of Berlin. Many credit the Reagan speech with the eventual demise of the Berlin Wall. Following is an excerpt from that speech.
Behind me stands a wall that encircles the free sectors of this city, part of a vast system of barriers that divides the entire continent of Europe. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
As they say in modern lingo, mic drop. Events unfolded in Eastern Europe in 1989 that culminated in the fall of the Berlin Wall. The communist government fell in Poland with the Polish legislative election in June 1989. Also in June 1989, Hungary began dismantling the electrified fence along its border with Austria, and then in September, 13,000 East Germans escaped through Hungary to Austria. Similar freedom events took place in Czechoslovakia. Not long afterward, huge demonstrations began in East Germany, with demonstrators demanding that open immigration between East and West be allowed. The movement continued to snowball to the point that the Communist Party bosses were unable to stop it. There were lots of negotiations and back-channeling, but ultimately the die was cast. Freedom came to East Germany on November 9, 1989, and the wall came tumbling down. Very little is left of the wall today in a unified Germany. There are a few short segments that have been preserved by the German government, but generally not much remains of the symbol of communist domination in parts of Europe following World War II. If you enjoyed this video, give a thumbs up, make a comment, and most of all, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching.